Good afternoon. This is Carl Ackerman from Sophos. We'll be talking about what a hacker can do in 3 hours. This one was fairly fun to go ahead and think about and to perform some experiments. What I wanted to assume was that our hacker is more of a wannabe criminal. They haven't done much yet, and they're junior. One of their first challenges will be how to find their way to the darknet, where they can find online forums like this where they can, in this case, buy an RDP password. And the reason why I picked this is my role at Sophos here has me doing wearing a lot of different hats. One of those is talking to our labs team about the kinds of threats that they see emerging. And it's not uncommon for us to have an account that's been breached that has Sophos deployed. And when we do the root cause analysis, we discover that what had actually happened is someone had logged in as the administrator onto a box and then used kernel level tools that they'd installed to kill Sophos protection. And the way they're getting in is often through an RDP password. So I wanted to say, well, just how hard is it to find an RDP password? So I did a couple of searches. I found my way to a forum where you can actually buy them. And you can use a couple of different payments. You can pay with PayPal, you can pay with Amazon, Wells Fargo, eBay, a variety of mechanisms. But I think what was most surprising here is to purchase a password for, in this case, we see a 2012 server, 4 gigabytes of RAM, relatively fast upload and download speed, located in Arizona, and last tested in May, that the password still works. And the total cost is $6.58. So I could buy an RDP password that way. But if I were cautious and didn't want to use my parents' credit card as a junior hacker or some stolen card, I might want to say, how do I go about getting these? But before I got into that, I wanted to say, well, just how prevalent are RDP password shops? And we did a quick search, found some reports on what we're seeing in that space from threat intelligence. And we see that the most common one is the ultimate anonymity services, where at any given time they have about 40,000 RDP passwords for sale. And each of the persons selling this has a reputation. So you know if you're buying from a reputable crook that's going to give you a password that works, or someone who's just claiming to be one and may give you a piece of garbage. But to find the UAS server, I did a couple of Google searches, and here I found a Google search that came up, and I actually get their tagline: "Your protection is our profession." This is a bunch of cyber criminals that want to make sure that when you're dealing with them, you know it's anonymous. They'll take a variety of payment methods for anything you buy in their shop, and buying, as we saw in RDP password, is cheap. How are these folks getting RDP passwords? And that took a little bit more digging, but the first thing is, for someone to go after and get an RDP password, you've probably enabled RDP on your servers or on your desktops. And to do that is very straightforward from Microsoft. You can enable it, and now that machine will be listening on the RDP port for authentications for remote desktop use. A fairly powerful and useful tool if you need to manage equipment remotely. So with users and customers exposing RDP, what's the next thing I need to do? I found a tool called Shodan, which is a wonderful search engine. It's incredibly powerful. It searches deeply across the internet, looking for everything from web cameras and routers and wind turbines and RDP. So a quick search with RDP for RDP passwords on Shodan will give me a long list of IP addresses and the ports that are exposing an RDP authentication. Now, as a junior criminal, I probably don't know how to actually brute force a password, and I'm not likely to be able to just guess my way in. So a quick search on YouTube finds there's a lot of tutorials out there, and this one here is going to show anyone who watches it how to use Kport scanner and NLBrute to hack RDP. It's all of 5 minutes long, so I could go ahead and use Shodan, identify some servers that are offering RDP, build a long list, run NLBrute, and start trying to brute force my way through the authentication protocol. And as we've seen, administrators even aren't often going to set, or aren't always going to set, very complicated passwords. I talked to a customer just recently who said, yeah, we were looking at the number of failed authentications we had on our RDP port, and it was, I think, 2 to 10 per minute on their particular port that was being exposed, and this is 24/7. So continuous attempts to brute force their way in on an RDP port, fully automated by a number of adversaries, potentially automated by this junior criminal that I'm pretending to be. But once I have an RDP password and I get onto that box in Arizona, what are they being used for? And as a criminal, it'd be good to know what I can do now that I bought this. I could use it to set up anonymity. I could set up a proxy through this so that if I'm doing a much more sophisticated attack, hopefully I get tracked down to this poor machine in Arizona that I've compromised and law enforcement stops there. I've deployed a lot of decoy software. It looks like it's where the attack was staged from. At a minimum, it'll make it harder for them to track me down. I can also take that server and use it as a spamming platform. But I'm a junior criminal, never done this before, don't know how to run a spam campaign, don't know what I would do with getting people to click on ads for Viagra anyways. Probably a little too complicated. I could root around on that box and see if they have anything of value. And maybe that site that I found where I can buy my RDP passwords will allow me to post data that I've stolen and have people make payments to me. But probably a little too sophisticated for this junior guy. I could set up some keyloggers. Maybe I get someone who's using, if not that server, say I went after someone's desktop, I see them logging into their bank. And now I've got access to the box. I can go ahead and log into the bank as them. The bank is probably confirming that I'm coming from a known machine. In this case, I would be, because I'm actually on the box. And I can do a wire funds transfer. My worry is, I don't know how effectively banks are at tracking that stuff down. I might run a coin miner. I can install a coin miner on this box and just start consuming CPU and electricity, and that money will start making it into my Bitcoin wallet. And if you watched my earlier talk on the threat landscape, it's fairly easy to set up a miner that's just going to redirect out to CoinHive, where I've set up an account, and money will be dropping into my wallet as it's being mined. But what I've decided to do is I'm going to deploy ransomware on this. I've heard about it a lot in the news, and I've also heard that there's ransomware as a service kits out there. So to get ransomware to run, hopefully I'm on as admin. I can uninstall the AV so I can run a really crappy ransomware tool that won't get detected now because the AV is down. I might even see if I can move laterally across other boxes. But what I want to do is say, how do I get a ransomware kit that a junior criminal or a wannabe criminal can use? And some more searching, especially now that I've found my way onto the darknet, finds this service. In this case, the service is called Satan, and they've built a product just for the junior criminal. It explains how I'm going to make money with it. They're going to take a 30% cut of any cryptocurrency that gets paid to me, and they will actually build the ransomware and a deployment kit and all the tools that I need, and they'll allow me to register. So I want to register for the use of Satan. It doesn't cost any money up front. They're just going to get a cut of any payments I get. It's important to note that Satan recommends you use two-factor authentication. You don't want a weak password here. You don't want a criminal coming in and stealing your account and redirecting payments to them. So they'll recommend you use public key infrastructure and set up two-factor authentication for your ransomware account. Once you do that, though, you need to actually configure the ransomware creation. So you need to determine what your payment's going to be. If you've been able to root around that box a bit, you understand whether it has valuable data or not. Say you've hit a healthcare record and you find that this is actually storing a number of healthcare records that you could have gone and sold on the darknet but chickened out at. So you might set your ransom payment at a few $1,000s, portions of a Bitcoin. And to ensure that the admin understands the urgency of making this payment, because you don't want to have to wait weeks for your payment, you can set a multiplier. After just 3 days, instead of $1,000, it's going to be $8,000. That should set the incentive for the admin to go ahead and make that payment quickly. So you can set all of this up. You can build multiples of these kits, and they'll give you the ability to take notes on where you've deployed them, how much money you're making. You can also build a dropper. So if you want to infect that server, say it's a web server, you can use it to try and deploy the malware itself on anyone that browses there. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and build it. I'm going to craft my ransom note, and they help me out with this. They'll even provide the poor admin that sees the ransom note instructions on how to get Bitcoin wallets and how to make the payment. And the nicest thing here is once I've set up my own Bitcoin wallet, and deployed this, the Satan is going to do the money collecting, and they're going to give me my 70% of any payments that come in. The guys running Satan, those criminal networks, they're happy. They've got other people doing infections for them. They're just providing the toolkit to do it. So we see that completing a ransomware attack for a junior criminal, I think the biggest barrier is finding your way on the dark net and getting the confidence to go ahead and become a criminal. Once you've got that, finding out how to buy a UDP password is relatively straightforward, and finding a ransomware toolkit as a service is relatively straightforward. And the odds of you getting caught, probably relatively low, unfortunately. These types of attacks are prolific. It's billions of dollars in ransom payments are being made. And this is one of the reasons why you see ransomware staying as one of the top threats in our environment. As a protector of your environment, one of my strongest recommendations is do not use RDP unless you absolutely have to. And if you are using RDP, put it behind a two-factor authentication protected VPN network. Also, patch early, patch often. A number of attacks don't necessarily have to come in over RDP to do a ransomware attack. They come in via weaponized documents, by exploits in browsers. Having your patches applied makes sense. And after you've been attacked, check to see what else they've done, preferably with a good EDR product. So it may not be the only thing they've left in your environment. They may have a backdoor so they can come out and extract some more money from you. Set a lockout policy for passwords so that if you have multiple failed authentications, that account gets locked and you can no longer get brute forced in after, say, 3 or 5 authentications in an hour. But most importantly, I strongly recommend you deploy Sophos Intercept X Advanced on all devices. This protects you against known malware delivery sites. It will watch for a ransomware attack based on behavior and go ahead and restore files and knock the adversary off the network. If they've gone in and tried to deploy that software, if we're still up and running, we're going to try and protect it. At a minimum, if the heartbeat on a machine goes down and you have the XG firewall, the firewall can take actions to quarantine that device from the internet because it's seen that Sophos has been taken off the device. There's a lot of ways to protect. I think the number one is don't expose RDP. It's incredibly common right now that I'm dealing with accounts that have been breached, and the root cause ends up being they had a weak password on their RDP ports. The adversary got into one or more devices, moved laterally, and launched a major attack. We can't protect you if you've given someone administrative access to the device. It's hard to do. We do a lot of things well. We even monitor for attacks when there's admin privileges on the box. So an admin can't steal authentication credentials, can't move laterally. But given the right tools at admin, they can install additional tools on the box, especially if you don't have application control turned on. One of the common tools we see deployed is a tool called Process Hacker. It runs in kernel, and it allows you to modify running processes. And Process Hacker, when allowed to run, can go ahead and kill just about anything it wants. Process Hacker is something that you can put on your application control list so you can just keep it off your network altogether. Sophos Application Control is about 2,000 different common tools. That's everything from brute force password crackers and network sniffers to versions of Adobe that may have vulnerabilities in them. We recommend you use the products that you have and configure them correctly, but it starts with making sure RDP is not exposed. Thank you very much.